Hi, thanks for coming. I am new to this platform, so this will be my learning experience. My name's Madeline. I am a registered dietitian and have been since 2002. I had a conversation yesterday with someone as we stood 6 feet apart, and the fellow said, "Gosh, where's your book?" And I said, "Oh, I don't really love writing." And he prodded me a little bit more. He said, "Well, what you know is what we need to hear, and you have a voice, and find some way to share the information." And so this is my promise to the fella, and I'm keeping it, and then I'm off the hook. So I'll just get to it. Of course, food is my particular interest, and I'll kind of direct you to my board. That'll get the heat off of me a little bit. And I'll talk to you a little bit today about food and life choices, because there are a lot of things we can do with our daily activities, our food, that can improve our immune system's ability to fight off virus. There's no cure here, but immune function is definitely impacted by our food and our lifestyle choices. And so I thought maybe every so often I'll give this a try, and every so often maybe I'd share a little bit of scientific data, and next time I could be prepared with some of the reports that I've read. Mast cells are pretty interesting. There is a new ICD-9 code for mast cell disorder. More and more people are having problems with abnormal mast cell reactions. And what I found curious is that if someone has too many of one kind and not enough of another kind of mast cells, and these are immune cells, then it sort of leaves the back door open for them to have a greater risk of viral susceptibility. And so what I have learned is that vitamin C and quercetin are able to reduce this odd mast cell misbehavior or superactivity, and that restores immune function to more normal ability. And on the other hand, if we inject mice or aerosolize glyphosate, which is one of our herbicides, to the site of the injection or the site of the aerosol contact with the body of the mouse, we have mast cells that proliferate. And so this is not beneficial to the immune function. And it may not be the cause of anything, but we can certainly optimize our health if we reduce the offending items. So we want to increase our vitamin C to normal and our quercetin to normal. I do that with plenty of fruits and vegetables. I try to get a cup of berries every day. Whether you want to choose blueberries or strawberries or raspberries, but in general, there's some that are more gentle. So I use a lot of blueberries and cherries and blackberries. And then also I use a lot of cabbage. Cabbage is pretty cheap and it lasts a long time. So that's my motivation for cabbage. And it has a good bit of polyphenols, and even foods that you wouldn't expect to be a good choice, like honey is full of polyphenols, and those help to improve your immune function. And sweeteners that have polyphenols can actually escort nutrients into the cells where they can be utilized. And so that's why honey may be a good idea on occasion if it's really with a nutrient-rich compound like lemon. And so the old-fashioned thing we used to do with a little alcohol and honey and lemon, there's some basis to escorting those nutrients of the lemon into the cell. And then what if I get organic when I can? Then I'm not paying companies to grow more herbicide-laden food products. So that's a choice that I have made. And it is an expensive choice, but for me, I think in terms of pay now or pay later, and usually the price later is far more detrimental. And if you look at cabbage, it's not that expensive. Or rice, even organic rice is not that expensive. And there are genes that turn on when plants are exposed to certain things, or when bacteria are exposed to certain things. And it's not to our benefit, the genes that can turn on when they're exposed to certain herbicides. If you want to go and look up some citations for yourself, go to pubmed.gov and type in the word Aldo, A-L-D-O, and rice, or bacteria. I'm trying to think of the keywords I used. But Aldo-Keto is one of the genes, and it was either in a bacterial study or a rice study. There have been a number of them now. And when a plant or a bacteria has the Aldo-Keto gene, it actually turns on that gene, and it is able to oxidize the glyphosate into another compound. And that compound, called glyoxylate, is in the blood of diabetics 3 years prior to the first high blood sugar. Probably not part of our health. And with all of these inflammatory genes or inflammatory chronic illnesses, there's a commonality. And I was on a CDC COE webinar, and the speaker was sharing that and gave a graph that the people who were dying of COVID-19 also were the people who had increasing CRP, which is C-reactive protein, is a marker of inflammation. And we can absolutely do things to reduce our CRP through our lifestyle choices and our diet. And so I want to consume things that aren't going to raise my CRP. Like, for instance, if we have our essential nutrition and we include protein each meal, that's essential. We need that. And it's usually not that much. And I can calculate that for people. But in general, if people have 2 or 3 big bites of protein, or at least the protein food each meal, they've covered it. And what type of protein? Well, that's a longer answer than we're doing today. But we want whatever that protein is to bring us omega-3s if possible. So if I had a can of sardines, the sardines are rich in omega-3. There's a balance between omega-3 and 6. And if the ratio is 5-to-1 or smaller, then you're improving your inflammatory markers. And you're improving everything. You improve your microbiome if you've got your balanced omega-6-3. It reduces cardiac incidence if you have a balanced omega-6-3. And so what an animal eats, this is what determines whether it has a balanced omega-6-3 or not. If something is corn grain fed, it's going to have a high omega-6-3 ratio, like 8-to-1 or 20-to-1. And that's not going to help an immune system. Immune function was best at 4-to-1 or 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 1-to-1 or 1-to-2, et cetera, et cetera. And we modulate that immune function based on diet. All of the grains have a relationship with omega-6-3. And I read tons of cow studies and got to see that the milk yielded the omega-6-3 ratio based on what type of grain they were eating, or were they 100% grass? And so I can choose, if I'm going to have a cow milk and I choose 100% grass-fed, I'm going to have a really good relationship of omega-6 to 3. And that's going to moderate my immune function, because there are receptors to receive omega-6 and 3. And if you've got too many of the 6s, then you're going to be making one hormonal compound called arachidonic acid, which increases inflammation in the body. If you have the right balance of omega-6 and 3, you won't be making arachidonic acid. You'll make a whole set of other things. You can't make arachidonic acid if you're balanced in excess. So we need some inflammation, because that's part of the driver for a healthy immune function, but we don't need too much. And so we can actually improve immune function by getting the right balance of omega-6-3 in our foods. And that is going to be having animals, or if we're eating animal products, to have those that we're consuming cold climate foliage, which would be wild seafood, or 100% grass-fed cows. And, you know, I respect if people don't choose to do dairy, but that's not the issue. The issue is get the right omega-3, 6-3 ratio. That's more important. And then know that if you're consuming oils, most of those oils are loaded with omega-6. They're high omega-6. So if you're using vegetable oil, well, what vegetable was it made of? That's all high omega-6 oils, most all of them. And if you don't know if it was, Google it. Google knows everything. And so just get rid of the oils. The olive oils could be better, because they're mostly a monounsaturated fat, and they have very, very minimal omega-6-3. Or if you wanted to go with a higher saturated fat, they're more heat durable generally. You could have small amounts of the saturated fat. The problem with saturated fats occur in the studies if they are with the wrong omega-6 ratio, 6-3 ratio, or if you've got them next to piles of fast sugars. We don't handle fats if they're next to tons of carbohydrate sugars. And then zinc and vitamin A are also on my essentials list. And where are you going to get that from? Know that if you're trying to get it from your whole grains and you're not sprouting them, you've got something called phytic acid that's kind of binding them. And so why not sprout your almonds? It's a pain in the butt. But if you put, get a little habit going where you put a pretty bowl on the counter, and every night before you go to bed, you boil some water for maybe like an herbal tea earlier in the day. Well, maybe not right before you go to bed, but maybe you make your early evening tea and you have a little leftover warm water. You pour that in with your almonds with a little pinch of salt. And then overnight, your almonds begin to sprout. The next morning, you can pinch off those little shells that are rich in arsenic. And then if you want to blend the almonds up later, you can make some almond milk with, if you started with 1 cup of dry almonds and you let them soak overnight, and you're ready to blend them up the next morning in your Ninja, you can add 3 cups of water in with your sprouted almonds, and then you've got some almond milk, and you just pour it through a little sifter thing, and you know, you can add a little drop of vanilla extract. Yeah, and that can go great in a coffee if you can't come up with 100% grass-fed cow milk. What other things can you use? There is palm oil, if you can find some sustainably sourced palm oil that has vitamin A in it. And as far as the zinc, Google has all that too, so just Google it. There's some great USDA websites, that kind of thing. And then you can do 1 ounce of liver every other day, and that gives you plenty of vitamin A and zinc. Yes, you can overdo it with vitamin A, so you don't want tons of it. You just want what's in good food sources. And there's lists on Google as well. Fish is rich in the omega-3s. The liver is rich in the vitamin A and the zinc. The nuts soaked. Okay, so that's all for today. And I fulfilled my promise to that fella who insisted that I share some of what I know. So that was a first take on it.